There are plenty of people who say that it's worse to lose in agonising conditions late in a game you could have won than to be battered, than to be hammered throughout the 80, never really have a chance, never really have hope. I disagree completely. Did it feel worse in the moment watching George Turner score there than it did watching Henry Ando score 15 tries or Louis Bielbiaré just do whatever he liked for 80 minutes? Sure, it did. But it's so much better to have hope.
Yeah.
And it's so much better to care. I would take caring and experiencing heartbreak over apathy any day of the week.
I think because both the men's and the women's team have been so uncompetitive for Wales for the last couple of years now. Watching the men's under-20s, this Six Nations, made me kind of realise how much I miss when Wales were competitive and gave us just enough hope to really get invested and then would throw it away at the end. And in a way, it's kind of cool that the men's team have done that again this time round.
Yeah. And so they did slip up against Scotland right at the end. Brilliant comeback from Scotland. They did everything they needed to win the game and come away with the full 5 points, the full bonus point. Wales, the wait goes on for a win in the Six Nations, now going all the way back to 2023, 2022 in Cardiff, since they beat Scotland then. So it's 4 years since the last one in Cardiff. However, we should get into this because I think this was an enormously improved Welsh performance.
Yes. A lot of Scottish fans have said Wales are the better team and Wales deserve to win that game. Now, I think if you break down those two questions, so were Wales the better team? Possibly. Maybe even probably. Did they deserve to win the game? I don't think so.
I think that's a reductive question to say, were Wales the better team? Were Wales the team that got closer to their ceiling on the day? Undoubtedly. However, are they the better team? No. And Scotland performing at 60% is still good enough to beat Wales performing at their current sort of 80%.
If Wales were the better team, Scotland are the better team.
The thing is, we'll get into this as we go on, but Wales had plenty of chances to win that game, and they did not take them. And then they actively handed Scotland too many of them. And we'll get onto that in a moment.
Yes.
But that is where they are in this journey. We have now seen they're a good enough team to compete at this level with teams in the Six Nations and to put in those kind of performances, but they're not yet at the stage where they've learned how to win and close out those games. And we'll get onto that in a second. But I think the beginning of this performance set a tone. Wales do the same thing they did in all the previous games. On the kickoff, they go long, looking to land it on someone who'll kick it straight back and win a line out, so they can use that as a launch pad. Sure enough, they do. Ball goes into touch. They throw it up. They chuck it down, and they immediately go into exactly the thing we talked about last week, right? Which is Wales' attack has been really good in the 22 under Tandy. It's been incredibly accurate. They are behind only New Zealand, France, and South Africa in terms of the most accurate teams in the 22 in terms of converting chances into tries. They played around halfway as though it was in the 22. They played the exact same structures and setup.
So what Wales like to do in the 22, and now, maybe further back to the 10-metre line, when they're in a good attacking position, is they like to send in, instead of doing your traditional pod of three forwards, they will send in one player, just a forward. It could even be a centre, but usually a forward who will run a hard line off 9. Realistically, they're probably not getting the ball. But Thomas Williams can hit them on the dump-off ball. Scotland have to mark this. Instead, the more likely option is a pod flooding around the corner, a pod of 2 or 3 who are there to get on the front foot and to clear each other out. The benefit of this, well, there's a few benefits to this. One of them, you've got a bit of a dummy runner there. Yeah. So you've got a couple of different options. The defence can't just look up and go, yeah, Rhys Carrier's going to carry the ball again, obviously, and fly off the line. Scotland have to drift a little bit, which means Wales get slightly more dominance in the carry. There was a part of us, I think, questioning whether this would work as far back as the 10-metre line, further outside from the 22, and it did. It was brilliant for Wales. It got them on the front foot from the very off.
But this works especially from the line-out. When the forwards, they've called everyone in, all of the Scottish forwards are in this side here. They just chuck it straight to Joe Hawkins with Eddie James on his tip on. He thinks about the pass very briefly. It means that you have Hugh Jones goes, okay, I'll mark 13, I'll mark my opposite man. It's a one-on-one contact with Sione Tuipulotu. He can then ride through that tackle. He gets over the gain line, and they bring these pods of forwards round. First time, they smash up. And we saw this last week, right, where Wales were hitting instead. Forwards standing 10 metres behind the gain line, and they like to do this thing. It's a very Matt Sherritt thing, where they'll have one pod as their primary carriers, where they'll put a bunch of them together, and the secondary pod is their kind of guys who aren't great carriers, but they're there really as like a dummy pod to just get quick ball and smash it up so they can then play after that. They played these pods much closer to the gain line, meaning that, yes, the dominant carry goes, an extra metre or so further forward, but more importantly, that pod that isn't the carriers, when they're hitting it up, and this was kind of across the whole game, they were smashing on the gain line instead of being caught behind it and then generating quick ball off that, which makes an enormous difference. And in this case, instead, that second pod just lifts out the back to Sam Costelow.
Yeah, it's a beautiful call by Sam Costelow here. The other thing about that as well is like the support's really close to each other.
Yeah.
So if they don't make a dominant carry, it's not like the clear out's bad.
Yeah.
It's not like that's going to be messy, so it means Wales can retain their own ball. Yeah, as you say, Costelow makes a really nice call. Again, as a Scottish defender, this is really hard to look up and kind of like scan here, because when the defensive picture is changing that regularly, you're getting up off the floor, you're shuffling out, you've got your head on a swivel, looking, break down, look in front of me, look to, Aaron Wainwright, whoever's running that short line there, break down again, back in front of me again. Oh, the ball's gone out the back, and the picture changes in such a short period of time there, and they manage to work the ball out to the wing to Josh Adams, who makes a really good run.
A decent chunk of this will be on Matt Sherritt, who will have adapted the shape and looked at things and gone, okay, if we run this off our first line out, then that'll work. Or if we run this off these situations, that'll work. But once it does become loose, once they do get a bit open, once they do get into phase play, Sam Costelow is calling something different basically every single phase. He is going, okay, let's play to width. Okay, let's crash it up. Okay, we're going to play like I'm going to be a first receiver, we're going to play off 10 here. Okay, next phase, Thomas, you play off 9. And that is so difficult to defend if the 10 isn't calling the same options repeatedly, which is a problem Wales have had the last few weeks, right? And it's interesting because I wonder how much of the 10, how much isn't. I want to put a lot of credit on Sam Costelow here. I thought he was absolutely brilliant throughout the entire game.
Outstanding.
But we also saw Wales do this against New Zealand, where they varied the play, they varied the shapes that Dan Edwards was calling consistently. So how much of it is like a system thing where they're going, okay, against England, we just call the same plays all the time? Or did they go, well, we weren't going to win those games, same as against South Africa, so we're going to hold some things back for Scotland? I don't know. But I think a lot of it just goes on Sam Costelow consistently calling really like bold plays. And often it wasn't about this is the best setup for what we can see here based on the defence. It was who's on their feet and therefore kind of prioritising that speed over shape, making sure that you're doing it based on the situation of your team rather than just the defence.
Yeah, and the other thing that Matt Sherritt has adapted to his credit from the France game, again, we criticised them for very regularly being quite deep and having quite wet carries that were like getting melted in midfield by France here. And what they changed here was the way that they're dividing up the forwards most of the time.
Yeah.
So, for instance, like Aaron Wainwright spent a lot of time playing as an edge forward, but also as a middle forward. They changed his role quite regularly. But for instance here, you've got a pod where there's Derry Lake, can still manage that. That's quite hard to mark. And then the next one, they group together Alex Mann as a first receiver with Rhys Carré running his tip-on line. And this is a brilliant use of Carré. They have everybody in kind of the optimum positions here. Dafydd Jenkins, who's a brilliant player, he's not in the team to carry the ball. He's there to clear out rucks and for his work rate, which we'll come on to later on. Ben Carter, very much the same. He was there as a line-up call, had a very, very good game. He's there mainly as a set-piece operator. He's not there to carry the ball. So both of those are best used as the minus on this, who was there to like lock the ruck down, stop any jackal threats from coming and getting over the ball. Alex Mann holds the ball up here and tips it onto Rhys Carré, who runs a lovely line here, gets over the gain line. And honestly, using Rhys Carré a bit more smartly and picking exactly what holes you wanted to pick in the Scottish defence was a game changer for Wales.
Yeah, and we saw that in the first try. They seal a line out through Alex Mann at the front, just very Peter O'Mahony style, getting up and just slapping it, like speed off the ground being more important than actual height. Scotland give away a penalty, Thomas Williams taps it. And it was a clear sign of kind of the intent and energy Wales were bringing into the game. He has a little run, he links up with Eddie James, Josh Adams points him behind and goes, there's space here. And at this point, you see all the Scottish cover go, oh shit, he's right. So one starts to drop back and another drifts off, just covering, just waiting.
Ben White starts corner flagging.
Yeah. Eddie James goes for the dummy kick and instead makes the half break, gets over the gain line, gets them up into the 22, and from there, Wales play, right? And you mentioned him a moment ago, Dafydd Jenkins had a game that I can only describe as Alan Wynne-esque.
Yes.
This was the best game I've ever seen him play. I thought he was the best player on the pitch by a country mile. He's completely tireless, right? Over the course of this attack, Wales played 10 phases and he hit 6 of the rucks plus carries the ball once. He was unbelievable all day. Was the top tackler, 24 tackles. Ben Carter also like hell of a shift for 22 tackles. But also hit more rucks than anybody else. Was like right up there with line-out calling. Wales' line-out was 100%. He currently sits top of the Six Nations with 98 attacking rucks hit. No one has hit more.
Also on that one that you're on about, that passage of play, right? Some of those, he was off balance. He was just back to his feet and he was still hitting the rucks. Some of them, he was really effective. Some of them, he was just there, which is better than him not being there, which is what most second rows would be.
Yeah. He's top for tackles made, 92% tackles made, 55 tackles he's standing on at the minute. And he's in the top 20 for carries as well. Like, his work rate is insane. And I think it's best highlighted maybe by this effort, right? Where people remember this huge tackle he makes on Kyle Stayner. He is The guard on the breakdown on this far side of the pitch. The ball then spreads wide and he starts corner flagging back and he gets back and is somehow in position to smash the ball carrier on the other side of the pitch further down in the corner.
It's mental. There's also the other try saver he makes on Kyle Steyn, which he doesn't do solo.
Yeah.
But Kyle Steyn here is in the starting blocks at the same point as him. Kyle Steyn's had a run up. Dafydd Jenkins is at a standing start. He sprints back. Kyle Steyn obviously has to check back inside and step. Dafydd Jenkins gets back there and pulls him down.
Yeah.
Also, there's this one. Off kick chase, him and Dewi Lake are kind of the last two up there because they're from the bottom of the ruck. You can see here, Dafydd Jenkins is like absolutely busting a gut to try and get into line. Obviously, he's not. He's on a bit of a delay here. Scotland obviously find their overlap. They get out wide. They get the ball into a lot of space where Ben White gets the ball on the line break. And Dafydd Jenkins immediately is corner flagging. He's doing like the scrum half roll. He's going for a catch up here. Ben White dabs it on the left foot. Josh Adams does a brilliant job of getting back there. And both Dafydd Jenkins and Tom Francis absolutely sprint to get to this breakdown here, alongside Lewis Rees-Zammit.
Tom Francis also absolutely everywhere. I thought he was exceptional.
Yeah.
Reece Carrier's getting a lot of the plaudits, deservedly, because Wales used him incredibly smartly, got him into good carrying positions. But Tom Francis completely tireless throughout the entire game for a guy who is not thought of as being the most dynamic, but the amount of ground he's covering, the tackles he was making, the rucks he was hitting, he was just absolutely everywhere. And indeed, his involvement in that opening try, as we mentioned, which is the same move that Wales ran and scored off against France. Dewi Lake taps, goes, he doesn't remember to tap it this time. He's one of the three big proper carriers for Wales. He smashes it up. He has immediately on him the 2 second rows and Alex Mann, and they are there to just clean up the ball and make it as quick as possible. Aaron Wainwright comes running against the grain, and in behind comes Reece Carey. Now, I think Scotland's a little bit of them going, they're not going to run the same move 2 weeks in a row, right? Or if they are, it's going to be a little bit like what France women did in the World Cup, right? Where they had one tap move they scored off in the first round, and every single round they had the new innovation on top of it.
Yeah.
And it was great fun to watch. I really enjoyed seeing that. It isn't like that. They just go, no, we're hitting Reece Carey again. But the secret weapon this time is Tom Francis, who comes in and just absolutely melts Gregor Brown, just charges in and takes him off the ball, takes him way beyond, and it gives Carey the final inch that he needs to just flop down. There's no one stopping his momentum as he's crossing the try line. He's down, he's over. Wales are 7 points ahead. And then the other try for Wales, the Josh Adams try, well taken again.
Yes, so Wales start this, again, very similar attacking patterns in terms of how they're bringing forwards onto the ball, but they go into a bit of a pick and go sequence here. One thing I like, again, we've talked about Wales's variation in the 22. On this occasion, Thomas Williams isn't interested in that. He goes, we're in a pick and go sequence, we're making loads of ground off this. Alex Mann's going to pick and go, I'm going to join in this so the rest of the forwards can stay on their feet. It's very, very smart. It's like what France do with Dupont when they go into their noir formation of pick and goes, is they just go, well, he can just play as a ninth forward, so people who, are able to like bust a hole a little bit further can do that. And interestingly, Wales kind of zigzag the way that they're doing this pick and go sequence. They'll go one for the left, one for the right. This is extremely tiring and really confusing because
the speed Aaron Wainwright comes in and takes this one, right? He is looking up. You've got players on both sides just watching the defence on the other side.
Yeah.
So Wainwright just sees one Scottish defender turn their head inwards and watch the ruck. So he charges at their outside shoulder and just makes him ground off that.
Likewise, Eddie James does a very similar one where he just charges straight in. And it's really hard to defend because you're having to go, right, lads, we're going to fold. Oh, they've gone the other way, we're going to fold again. Oh, they've gone the other way, we're going to fold again. And because they're doing this in such a short amount of space, you can't just maintain one solid defensive line. You have to manipulate it constantly. So it's really smart by Wales. Then they move one carry out and they charge into Sione Tuipulotu, who makes the tackle here.
Costelow spots this some way out. So he looks up, he sees Sione's now on the floor. All they have on this side is a couple of forwards just folding around last second. And then beyond them, Hugh Jones, Kyle Steyn, Blair Kinghorn. He figures, okay, we get this forwards out the game so they can't drift. And this is easy enough. This is really tough situation to defend for Scotland. So he calls for one more carry, and he gets it very literally in a Reece carry, who comes around the corner and throws a lovely little offload to Alex Mann. And this means it takes 2 extra defenders out. It means there's 2 people having to commit, well, 3, because 2 are going in on Reece carry, and now committed, tied into that ruck. They fall to the ground, and it's then quick ball. All their forwards are still in quite a compact space, so they all ruck over, they'll smash through, and the ball is fast. And Thomas at this point has no thought of going the other way. Costelow made the call 2 phases ago. He's ready. He spotted this. The pass comes across the face with the Welsh forwards flooding on last second. Costelow has no thought of anything else. He has one runner outside him plus Josh Adams on the wide extreme, and he just flings it immediately. The ball is in and out his hands incredibly fast because he wants Blair Kinghorn to panic. He doesn't want, if he holds on to this a second, right, Kinghorn has a second to adapt and then move as the ball does. Instead, Kinghorn comes off the line, tries to step into the passing channel, but he's too late. The ball's already through the passing channel into Josh Adams' arms.
It's a really smart distribution of their forwards and their carriers, using Rhys Carré around that corner. And again, it just brings layers into the Welsh game. Just by being the guy he is, it draws two players in, so when he throws that offload out the back, it means that Alex Mann can still get over the gain line as a 1v1 carry because, crucially, he's opposite Hugh Jones here. So he's got their centre, their other defensive organiser on the floor. Both Sione Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones are out of the game at this stage. And naturally, if Sione gets back to his feet in time, he probably wants to mark the open side as well. So it means Carl Steyn and Blair Kinghorn, as you say, are the only two people marking the three Welsh backs when Costelow actually calls that ball out. It's such a smart use of Rhys Carré. As I say, it brings so many layers to this Welsh attack.
Yeah, it's brilliantly well taken. And Wales continued being very good in the 22, whilst also adding more around the park. However, they did let Scotland back into the game. So Wales gave away 3 penalties in the opening 4 minutes of the game and then calmed it down an awful lot. And the discipline was hugely improved on where it was. They're still leading the Six Nations penalties conceded, and that became more and more of a theme as the game went on, and they gave Scotland opportunities in the 22. And they're Scotland. They have Finn Russell at 10. They're going to take them.
So this is the second week on the trot where Scotland's opponent have had a moment of indiscipline where they've gotten somebody sent into the sin bin, which is their own fault, obviously. And they have left, off a set piece, the space in the far corner, because that is the hardest place for it to get to. They've said to Scotland, right, OK, we challenge you to send the ball all the way through your hands so your last man has to be the person to get on the outside. And Finn Russell, being one of the smartest rugby players ever, calls the bluff. He knows exactly what play to call here.
Such a good play. This is so well drilled as well. Like, more than just being the right play to call, they know their role so well. They've ran this 1,000 times in training and 100 times in games. So you look at the way they line up here, right? They know all they've got to do is mean that no one can drift out too far. So Jim Botham here is on the inside of Sam Costelow, and he will be out the game in the moment with this first pass. That's fine.
Crucially as well, they position Sione Tuipulotu opposite Jim Botham.
Yeah.
They very easily, normally, frankly, would have put him opposite Dewi Lake. They shift him out a channel.
So Sione's body language here is really good. He doesn't look like he's interested in anything other than carrying. He's like, right, okay, give it to me. I'll trug it up. I'm used to doing this, tongue and blood. Fine, send me over the gain line. Finn is like, yeah, Sione, you get on with that. I'm just going to hang about and text on my phone for a bit. Suddenly the ball flips out behind into Finn's hands, and Hugh Jones here runs a brilliant line. So he gets ahead of the pass, and normally you'd go, well, wouldn't you want him behind? Wouldn't you want him there as a passing option for Finn? No. What he does is he gets in Sam Costelow's way, and it then cuts him off entirely from the rest of the Welsh defence. So we then have Eddie James is in here, and they've moved Josh Adams in one to essentially be the other centre, right? So Eddie James is filling in for Joe Hawkins, and Josh Adams is now Eddie James. So by bringing Duhan van der Merwe around the corner here, him wrapping around, Josh Adams, he played on the Lions tour. He knows you can't leave him undefended, and you probably can't leave Eddie James to double job, to watch both Finn Russell and Duhan. He goes, OK, I've got to come in on Duhan. Fine, I'm going to watch that. At which point, the ball comes out. Finn is, because Hugh Jones runs such a good line, Eddie James can't afford to drift off at all. He can't fade off. He can't trust Sam Costelow to cover that. There's no chance at all. The ball just goes right wide to Kinghorn, who can draw and give and put Carlson away in the corner.
Yeah. The crucial thing is the way that they stop that Welsh team from forwarding, from the line out outwards, Everybody on Costello's inside. Like, normally, again, it's quite misleading to look at overlaps and just look at it as a numbers game in these sorts of scenarios because the players can all move. However, that line by Hugh Jones, honestly, it opens up the whole team here. Because the way Costelow wants to defend this is on the outside shoulder of Hugh Jones, so he can push him off and get to Finn at the back. And it means everyone else can shift out one.
Russell looked at this picture and knew, if I can get Eddie James to take me as his man, then we'll score.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. The entire rest of the move is just by getting Finn lined up against James. And when that happens, it means that Adams has to push in on Duhan, and the pass is wide, and the try is scored.
Yeah.
Finn had a quieter game than he did perhaps last week, but he produced 3 or 4 moments that won them the game.
Yeah.
And for me, you either give player of the match to Dafydd Jenkins, who being the best player on the pitch, or you give it to Finn Russell because he won them the game. And that second half, he produced a couple. So his try itself is just really smart. It's classic Finn Russell. So Scotland go through, 26, 27 phases?
Yeah, 27,
I think. Repeated forward carries. And Wales get lulled into not a false sense of security, but they're a bit like, okay, this is what Scotland are doing.
It's met with good Welsh defence,
Yeah.
I will add, for the first sort of like 25 odd phases of this.
You've got Costelow here, is on this far side. He gets dragged into the ruck last second as well. And on the other side, you've got Eddie James here. He is sat there and he's barking orders to his forward. He doesn't turn and look outside him. Where Sione Tuipulotu, a few phases out, does look up and does go, okay, there's some space there. The centre's been pulled in. And he then gets involved in the forward pack. But Finn, the whole time, is watching that. Until last second, he goes, brilliant. James hasn't folded back out. He hasn't even looked up and checked whether his channel is still needs to be defended. And he calls Blair Kinghorn. He really barks for him, having been totally disinterested up until now, having just been sat there, playing Angry Birds on his phone. Suddenly, Kinghorn flashes around and Josh Adams has no choice but to fly up here. The best percentage play he has is to really fly up and hope someone else covers Finn, because he's got to watch every other option. He's got to try and cut this off completely.
Same with Lewis Rees-Zammit. A lot of people blaming him for buying the dummy, but actually he kind of has to do that. Has to defend quite aggressively, because this is the first time the ball's come out in the whole 27 phases. He wants to gain a bit of territory and get Wales off their line. Also, crucially about that, so Eddie James is having to defend around the post here, which is an incredibly difficult position as a centre, because obviously if you don't then get involved with your pack when they're having to defend a lot of pick and goes on the back foot, you'll get bollocked by your defence coach. You're more likely to concede a try, because
Wales don't have a defence coach, but beside that,
very true, but you're more likely to concede a try because they're reloading quicker than you, because it's easier to reload on a pick and go sequence in attack than it is in defence. However, as you say, when Sione looks up and points, he's actually not pointing at Eddie James, he's pointing at the channel outside him, which is occupied by Thomas Williams and Lewis Rees-Zammit. And he is saying to Hugh Jones, like, this is the guy you want to isolate. And even though, both Sione and Hugh Jones don't actually end up in that final sequence where they actually score the try, Finn Russell still has that in his mind, that Lewis Rees-Zammit is the person that he's trying to isolate, to bring out of the line. And he does that via Blair Kinghorn. As you say, this is the only time in that whole sequence where he calls the ball out. And the thing that I love about this is it's not one of those where Finn Russell goes, oh, they've picked and gone for 12 phases. We should probably try something different now, shouldn't we? Instead, he looks up and he eventually goes, okay, cool, I'll have it now. And between him clapping and having the ball in his hands, there's about 1.5 seconds. Like, Ben White's service on this is absolutely outstanding to feed that to him. That is a fly half who has managed games for over a decade now and has been a world-class fly half for that length of time. And you mentioned, like, is that worthy of a man of the match award? And it probably is. There's that, obviously, Rory Darge and Matt Fagerson as well.
Both brilliant.
Every single time in that second half, which we're going to have to talk about, we're going to have to move on as Welsh fans from that first half and how great it was. Every single time, Wales got into a position where they looked like they're going to score a clincher. They're going to, like, dig Scotland into the ground here. Those two would just spoil the ball and just go, not today, lads. Sorry.
I would argue there weren't really those moments because they were doing it earlier when Wales got into those positions.
Yeah.
And then you've got obviously what's going to be the iconic try of this game. What this game is going to be remembered as the game where Finn Russell did that little quick restart. And again, this was a spot by Sam Warburton on the TV coverage. Gabe Hayman-Webb chases the kick from the penalty, Jared Evans kicks, and then isn't quite back into position. And Russell spots this. Apparently Matt Fagerson spotted this. Russell mentioned after the game. And they score off this, right? There's not much to be said that hasn't already been said on this try, but it just goes to show the level of quick thinking Scotland are applying the entire game long and finding ways to dig themselves out of these situations, because they have been here countless times and this Welsh team haven't. And I think that showed in the final stanza of the game, right? Where in that last 20 minutes, Wales had quite a number of chances to wrestle back momentum. And if you watch the second half through, right, the entire time Scotland are the protagonists. Scotland have momentum. And Wales are given, I think, 2 to 3 chances to change that. One of them is this penalty to take them from 17 to 20 points, and Scotland have been in complete control here, and then Wales win a penalty. The crowd cheer is huge. They're well behind them, and these are the sort of moments that if you're going to be a championship team, you go for the corner, and even if you don't score, you've changed the momentum of the game. Instead, they kick it and Scotland suddenly back down in your half 20 seconds later. All you've done is move the target Scotland need to win the game back by 3 points, rather than changing momentum and making Scotland feel any different. Rugby is an inherently emotional game. And if you're going to win matches at international level, you have to ride that as much as you do tactics and physicality and whatever else, right? And they just let Scotland continue in the same emotional momentum mould that they were repeatedly. And then you get into the other examples, which are a run of really daft penalties. With the Thomas Williams croc roll, which is a croc roll, right?
Don't do it.
Yeah, it's not a dangerous croc roll, so it's only a penalty rather than a yellow card. But you're clamping down on every croc roll, because the moment you start going, well, that one, he's not going to injure him seriously, so we'll let it go, you start introducing these kind of layers of stuff, and you start legalizing some that may...
And somebody will break their ACL from this happening.
The point in outlawing the croc roll is that nobody does it and player behaviour changes so that nobody's trying that technique, and therefore nobody's doing their ACL, no one's doing their lower limb joints because they're incredibly dangerous.
And crucially, Thomas Williams does this well where we're on penalty advantage because Matt Fagerson's got in a great position over the ball. He's going to steal this. Right? If Thomas Williams clears him out legally, he's going to steal this. But crucially, Wales would go back for a penalty advantage, a chance to kick down the line and get into the 22.
Or just kick the points.
Or kick for goal.
And get 7 points up so it's a draw rather than a loss when Scotland inevitably score.
Yes.
But you then look at this penalty really daft by Lewis Rees-Zammit. Like, he has a chance to give this clean pass, and he doesn't. He waits because he wants to try and beat Sione Tuipulotu on his own. He doesn't. He then tries to overplay, tries to give the pass anyway, loses it forward, then goes to play the ball on the floor. Some referees might give this a knock on. I've seen plenty of Welsh fans arguing that. It doesn't matter at all because you're still giving Scotland a chance on the 22-metre line to attack. And then the repeated penalties coming in the following defensive set. Again, the challenging for the ball, I don't have a huge problem with it. I get what they're looking for.
It's desperation, isn't it?
They gave Scotland 4 chances to win this game through dumb penalties, through poor decision-making. And when given 3 chances of their own by Scotland, they didn't take any of them. So one of them we mentioned the croc roll, one of them this scrum, which was leave the ball in. And the moment you leave the ball in, even when your scrum's been going well, what happens here is both loose heads get on top of the opposition tight head. And so on the side, the camera is on here and the referee is on, it looks like a clear picture that it's going to be a Wales penalty. If you look at the other side where the judge is standing, he's seeing a clear Scotland penalty. And then the first player to stand up is Welsh. And you've brought the referee into this, right? If we just play this ball away, they have a chance to do so, and just play to width and have a chance to run some set move, get into the 22, and from there they're very good. And potentially you stress Scotland winning a penalty, right? They don't take that chance. And likewise, the other penalty earlier, which they do kick and then leads to the try for Darcy Graham. Wales were given chances to win this game, and some of those chances come in the 50th minute. You've got to identify those rather than just the ones in the last 5 minutes. And when you're given those chances, you have to take them. Whereas had 2 of those clean cut in the last 10 minutes, and they ignored both of them. And the thing is, it's easy to get frustrated because you're used to watching other teams. But this Welsh side are not there yet as a team. What you want is them in a few months' time to be in a position where they've learned from this game and they've gone, okay, we have to take those moments. We have to learn how to do this. Because it's something you get good at, right? You look at the 2019 Welsh team that could have won the World Cup, did win the Six Nations, did win a Grand Slam. They were the best Welsh team I've ever seen at identifying those moments. One of the best teams I've ever seen, looks like kind of the modern Springboks, at just knowing when to go for the kill, and that was the thing they were so good at.
The thing that links all of those penalties is Wales getting potentially a little bit greedy, a little bit desperate. In individual moments where Scotland were physically dominating them. So the scrum, that is Archie Griffin going, okay, like I can turn this into a dominant picture rather than just holding my feet. I'm going to do something illegal and give away a penalty here. You've got Nicky Smith, whilst his team are on the back foot, goes for a jackal, a very speculative jackal. His hands go to the floor and then he goes to try and steal the ball. He gets rightfully penalised for this because Scotland get a really good carry. If Scotland's carry here isn't good, Nicky Smith has rights to the ball. He's going to much more likely stabilise himself and steal that. The Lewis Rees-Zammit one you were on about a moment ago. He steps around Matt Fagerson, fair enough, like give that a go. And then he tries to go over Sione Tuipulotu, who melts him in the tackle. And at that point, he goes, oh, well, I've got to rescue this situation somehow. I'll offload it, All of these things come from Scotland physically dominating Wales and the croc roll as well. As I say, it's Matt Fagerson in a good position and Thomas Williams just goes, well, how can I rescue this? It's by doing foul play, which overall is technical. It's going to send us further down the pitch, And that's the thing, because Wales in the second half came out essentially just trying to protect their lead rather than actually trying to extend it, to use a cliche.
A large part of that came from Scotland just getting physically on top of them and Scotland having more moments and more territorial control. A lot of that through Russell and Ben White.
Yes, and you look at, we've talked about 2 tries there, the Darcy Graham try and the Finn Russell try. Those come from collectively, each of those tries come from Wales kind of switching off for about 1.5 seconds to 3 seconds each, right? Combine that is about less than 10 seconds worth of moments where Wales weren't entirely switched on as Scotland that were worth 12, 14 points, And that swung in a game of international rugby because Wales didn't have that many opportunities in the second half. And this is why I started this video by saying, can you say that Wales were the better team? You can absolutely say that. Some people might disagree, whatever. Do Wales deserve to win this game? No, they don't, unfortunately. As brilliant as they were, Scotland deserved to win the game because in those tight moments that require somebody managing the game and knowing exactly what to do, being experienced as Finn Russell is, and also, as I say, knowing when to challenge the breakdown like Rory Darge did, and he was a genius at the a breakdown all day long and made life absolute hell for Wales, Scotland were on top of all of those.
Yeah.
You know? And as brilliant as Wales' attack was, as brilliant as the effort was, and as much as like this is the best Welsh performance we've seen in ages, frankly, possibly in multiple years.
Oh, yeah.
Scotland, because of the way they managed the game, and you talk about game management and you think, oh yeah, kicking for territory. You think about stuff like that. It's not just that. It's the energy you bring in these scenarios where the opposition is starting to lose their discipline. It's how do we get around this? It's Sione pumping people up.
It's the exact inverse of so many Wales-Scotland games we saw a decade ago, where Scotland were the better team, Scotland played better on the day, but Wales knew how to win games. And they'd been in those situations and they knew the exact moments you had to go for the kill and the exact moments that you had to kick for the corner and go for the penalty, or the exact moments you had to slow the game down and just play territory. And Scotland have that now, right? And I think the other comp is Italy of 2 or 3 years ago, where suddenly they were getting into positions where they were good enough to win games and they didn't know how to do it. They were panicking a little bit. And it's one of the unique things about rugby union, right? Is because it is so emotional, it's so tactical. You have to be switched on for 80 minutes and you have to identify the moments in which you need to do that. And Wales felt to me, I was looking at this and I was kind of going like, okay, there's a team who could be properly competing in 2 years' time. And the really pleasing thing, I think ties back into this, right, about this Welsh kind of whole Six Nations so far, kind of gets summed up for me by Eddie James, who anyone watching the Welsh teams in the URC looks at Eddie James and goes, that guy is long-term a Wales international, right? Anyone watching him when he's played for Wales over the last few games and last year goes, that guy offensively is ready, defensively isn't quite. And then we've seen this tournament, every game he's got better and better.
Yeah.
And a few times he's shut down the Scotland attack completely in a way that we're not mentioning, right? We mentioned him on 2 of the tries. One, Finn Russell forced his hand, and the other one he switched off for 3 seconds.
As an international 13, if you're irrelevant defensively, that's bloody good.
Yeah, exactly. So plenty of times he was really good in getting in the passing channel, shutting things down and being incredibly smart, doing the kind of things he wasn't doing.
Opposite Hugh Jones.
And the fact that he has done the kind of learning I expect him to do in about a year, I thought it was going to take him until about next year's Six Nations to learn on this and improve on this.
100%.
And he is very close there already. And if the rest of this Welsh team can continue to improve and learn at the rate Eddie James is, there's going to be a team there by next year's championship.
I love that. And there's so many players that came in with a point to prove into this game.
Yeah.
Sam Costelow being one of Tame Plumtree, frankly, being one of them.
He was great for 10 minutes. Yeah.
But he was really good.
James Botham, who I've been saying should be playing for... I love watching James Botham. Incredibly physical, chucks himself at everything, does not seem to feel pain. Obviously, he gets injured a lot, but, you know, maybe that helps with it. But brilliant player. I rate James Botham so high he's international number 6. And proved it, showed it.
So it's a weird one for Wales because, as you say, we are back to that, not to that full era because this is a one-off game, of feeling like, oh, this is the one that got away. But I think whilst it's easy to feel like that and to try and blame exterior factors, Scotland deserves to win that game.
Yes.
Because they were clued in at the moments where it really mattered. And that comes back to what you're saying about, like, Finn Russell won them that game, you know? If Finn Russell did nothing else in that whole game, it doesn't matter, you know? Which, luckily, he did do other things in that game.
But the best thing is, I'm now looking forward to the last 2 Wales games.
Yeah.
The 3 rounds of this Six Nations so far, I've been a bit like, oh, the other games have all been great, it's a shame about Wales. And then this game happened, and now I'm going, no, they can give Ireland a game, and maybe they can beat Italy, we'll see. I would start with Italy as favourites comfortably, but maybe, you never know. And how good to have a Welsh team back that you never know about.
Yeah. So the shrine to Dafydd Jenkins needs to get built in Cardiff. Well, I would say that, but he's probably going to take it on himself and start building it himself, isn't he?
He'll be knocking it out day and night. You know, he'll be building it. Like if Dafydd Jenkins was tasked with building the pyramid, he'd do it in 3 weeks. Like on his own, without help. Chris Shunter would stand at the side holding the ropes.
And then at the side he goes like, you know what, should we make a Reece Carrow while we're here?
That's even bigger.